Hey guys, welcome to the 429 podcast. Too many requests.
I'm
Um,
I'm too.
and I'm Nine. Today we'll be talking about the argument working from home to against working from the office. So for two, I know you guys have very different stance on that argument. So let's start off by saying what's the benefits with the other, what's the cons with one. So what do you guys think?
Why don't you start? Go ahead.
I'm kind of in the boat of working from the office, right? I think productivities are definitely high in the office, and I'm definitely more of on like the social aspect side of it. I personally like interacting with my coworkers. I like being in that environment. Sometimes, the best ideas and collaborations come from the office rather than being at home. But that's just my stance on it. How about you, Four?
So I can definitely get behind some of the stuff like that you just talked about, but I tend to prefer work from home. I find that commuting back and forth from the office is just a lot of dead time.
Mm-hmm.
I could, spend working while I'm at home. Some people commute anywhere from 30 minutes to, I've even seen some people go up to 2.5 hours one way every single day. So you're talking about so much time, and that really affects your work-life balance. Because, regardless of your commute, you're still at the office probably for anywhere from 7 to 9 hours every day. And, I find one that's just a lot of dead time. It's a lot of useless expenditure in terms of money and transportation fees. Working from home, you don't got to buy a train pass, a couple $100 every single month. You don't got to take...
Those add up. Those add up.
They do. You're talking about, at least for me, I might be spending anywhere up to, almost $4,000 or more every year on transportation alone. That's money in my pocket when I don't have to actually go to the office. And aside from that, I find that a lot of offices have been adopting like this open office technique, and that's kind of distracting, to be honest. And you've always got someone peeking over your shoulder. You feel very pressured in these offices. And
If I remember, that kind of space was popularized by Facebook's open office. I think they were one of the first ones to implement such.
No, definitely.
So,
And I'm personally not a huge fan of it. I would much rather have my own cubicle, or even just be in my own house where I can do my thing. Don't got to worry about anybody else. I think work-life balance is the biggest thing on work from home. And personally, I find that I can be just as productive at home as I am in the office. Now, a lot of companies don't have what I would call the best infrastructure for working from home.
yeah.
There are definitely things that different corporations can do to increase productivity on work from home.
And when we kind of saw that with the pandemic, how unorganized some of these corporations were when it came to now shifting to work from home
Oh yeah.
indefinitely.
Well, I personally think that you can very effectively work from home given the proper tools to do so. What do you think about that?
I'm in agreement with you there. Definitely on the commuting aspect. Like I personally commute about close to an hour and a half, right? Hour and a half one way. So it's about 3 hours a day total for commuting time.
I mean, it's a lot, right?
It is a lot. It is a lot, right? It's definitely under the current idea of what they call super commutes, of people commuting more than an hour per one way to get to like work and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But to be fair, the way I sort of like see it, right, that sort of falls into my work-life balance. At least for me personally, right? My commute was sort of like those checkpoints for the day where it's like, okay, I'm preparing myself to go into work in the morning.
Yeah.
And once I'm on my commute on the way back, it's like, okay, I'm off the clock. I'm done for today. Like, and it doesn't repeat until Monday, right? Or the next day, sorry. Right? So that was sort of my aspect on the whole commuting part, because that sort of became like my mental checkpoints of when I'm in the office and when I'm checked out of the office.
Yeah.
Now I'm sort of in the point where it's like I don't have that mental gap now.
Transition.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sort of just like either always working or just like when it's on the weekends, I'm like on and off from work and stuff like that. So it's like definitely putting in more hours into work. So definitely more productive, don't get me wrong. But definitely, that whole mental aspect of balancing has definitely been thrown off for me, I would have to say.
So let's recap a little bit. I know you're arguing towards right now that we should implement more work from home, given proper infrastructure and tools. And two, you're saying we shouldn't move away from the standard work from the office because they offer much more benefits. and then working from home,
Mhm.
right? Now, we got to take account why we've been having this conversation in the first place. The whole pandemic has really shed light on if the need to work from office anymore, right? A lot of articles, news stories have picked up that one can be as productive working from home than they could be working from the office, or some employees shouldn't even be working from the office because like you said, it's a long commute, a lot of distractions sometimes working from the office. I read multiple threads on Reddit and Twitter how many people have not only benefit from working from home, but list a lot of annoyances from working in the office. You have to deal with that Karen that always talks about what she did over the weekend, distracting you from work because you can't be rude, or how the commute that's like an hour and a half kills you because you have to wake up an extra 2 hours just to get ready. These are just nitpick things, and people have already figured out ways to like transform their home into like a perfect office.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got your stance, right? So let's go into depth of exactly each point. We're going to be talking about 4 direct topics about, I would say, the arguments between the two. So first one, I would say, is a big one, productivity, right? So let's start with you four. I know a lot of big concerns with working from home is that productivity will go down. There's way too many distractions. You're surrounded by not only just, common things that you enjoy, video games and Netflix and stuff like that, but family and all that. What would you say your stance on productivity from working from home?
So personally, I find myself, I am more productive at home than I am anywhere else. I personally actually, have a nicer setup in my house as in regards to my cooking equipment than most offices provide. I've got my own mechanical keyboard. I've got multiple monitors. I've got a nice mouse, nice speakers. I'm more comfortable in my own environment. I can get into the zone better than I am in an office. Personally, I find that bright lighting is not good for me. I like to work pretty much in the dark, to be honest. Like right now, my lights in my basement are all off in my kind of home office area, and when you're in an office, you get those very bright fluorescent lights.
Yeah,
they're very sensitive to that. I find that I'm always annoyed by them, and I did actually get like anti-glare and blue light glasses, not even prescription ones that I can wear in offices now to kind of help me deal with that. But I'm much more comfortable in my own house. So I think I'm not the only one that kind of feels like that about the lighting just being distracting, but also the environment itself. There's so many people tapping away, typing away. There's always somebody walking by your desk. These are things, they're just distractions. They kind of pull me out of my train of thought. Personally, I like to work with music on as well. And sometimes people don't like that, or sometimes you'll get kind of shamed for having headphones while you're at your desk. And, I like to kind of just be able to do my own thing, focus on what I'm doing, not have to worry about anybody else. And I'm lucky enough to have kind of my own home office area in my house. So maybe that makes me a little bit of gives me a little bit of bias, but I think if you have the means to have like a home office like I do, it would be much beneficial for you to work in your own house.
of course. You offer a lot of good points. A lot of the things that you argued right now would say boost your productivity, and they're reasonable. I would say things that one would want. Proper lighting, some sort of like good music. Stuff that encourage you to be more productive, and stuff that motivates you and pushes you. And that's never something wrong. And you could wear headphones or go into a darker room in the office, but like these are not really solutions, just more, I would say, temporarily adjustments. And you can't really.
It's even bigger of a problem with the office, the open office spaces that we talked about earlier. They're becoming more prominent. Almost every office is kind of gearing towards one of those types of layouts, and controlling lighting in your area, it's almost impossible. They've got giant floors with just fluorescent lights everywhere, and it's just kind of very hard to keep to yourself. And like, I know I talked a little bit about this before, but there's just so much pressure on you when you're in the office, right? Like, you just always feel like you need to be being extremely productive. And like, even if I'm just like tabbed out into Google and I'm looking for, I don't know, maybe I'm searching a question on Stack Overflow or something, like I feel pressured to get back to my IDE faster because I need to look productive because everyone else around me is working, right? And I mean, I think that will actually drive productivity down, that amount of pressure.
I see what you're saying. It's kind of like a big brother looking over after you and stuff like that. That constant eye watch. It doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something unproductive, but it can give you that sort of sense that like, kind of like, oh, I should look like I'm being productive, even though you could be, you could be doing something actually productive, but from one perspective outside of your own view, it can be looking like, oh, he's on Spotify, meanwhile you're just trying to lower the volume, or you're looking at a Google and he's like, oh, he's just Googling stuff. You're actually looking at Stack Overflow forms and stuff. So these are legitimate concerns, and I agree with them for the most part. What do you think too? I mean, you clearly think productivity will be way higher working from the office.
Yeah, personally, I do, because I see, to For's point, that pressure to be more productive.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I guess that's more of like a corporate culture kind of aspect, because I feel that at work, but at the same time, I don't feel that urgency. Like if I'm Googling something on Stack Overflow, mentally, I know I'm working, right? Mm-hmm. And like even when maybe my managers or someone walks by and sees it, they know I'm working because I'm on Stack Overflow and testing some code or something, right? Just a heads up, I'm a software developer, guys, to make it clear for those of you who don't understand that. But I personally didn't feel that pressure, and I personally like working from the office because it's not. I see to the point of the fluorescent lighting and stuff that Ford brought up, but a lot of corporations have been taking that into consideration. So personally, I know for where I work and everything, we have lots of windows, right? We have lots of windows, so it's a lot of natural lighting, which I think has been very, very beneficial when I'm working. I feel that for myself personally, I feel like in a brighter mood. I feel more productive, right? I feel like I get more stuff done. Whereas right now I'm in a basement with just fluorescent lighting, and it definitely derides my productivity that way, because I'm sort of like, okay, well, there's no natural light. Like I feel like I'm like in a dungeon just working, right? Which sort of went back to my commute aspect of like, I don't have that mental cutoff anymore, right? It's sort of just, I'm always just in this dungeon just working,
Speaking also on the argument of natural lighting, right? I personally have experience working in the office too, right? And one of the things I noticed to the topic of natural lighting is that it really depends on where you work. I was in the unfortunate side that where my side of the building, or where my desk was always inland towards other offices, which meant that basically we only got natural sunlight, I would say, up to like 2 p.m. because the sun would then go over to the other side and most of it would just be shadowed by the building itself.
Oh, interesting.
So that's so it goes back onto like office location and everything. Yeah, which is like fact is you really can't really think about it. I mean, like you're working, you're not going to really think about, like, is my desk facing east or west?
I care more about if my code's working or failing than my desk is facing east or west.
Exactly. So, like, you're not going to personally be thinking about that. And even though it might not be a major contribution of your productivity, it is something that does have an effect. I definitely have seen myself firsthand get, lose motivation just purely because it's like a darker day or it's a rainier day. It affects your mood. Even if you don't,
I think definitely that aspect. Like I remember in the winters working and stuff like that is definitely a big mood affector. But now, like during the summers, like
it's a big lifter.
It's a big lifter.
It's a big lifter. And I think also you can argue for your side, right? I personally, in the last few months, have been working from home, and my setup is in the basement, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a complete opposite setup than you would have in an office in the city. There's no big windows. There's barely any exposure to natural light here. Barely I get into any like interaction or viewpoint to the outside world, which means that most of the benefits that you will get from natural lighting or exposure to nature, right, is pretty much mute because I'm working from the basement. So I probably would have been more productive if I was working at the office right now and got had big natural windows to constantly show me and motivate me through natural lighting and stuff like that.
And I think there's, one more aspect to that also besides the natural light aspect. I know Four mentioned like, his personal computing setup at home.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely if you have a personal computing setup at home that's as equivalent to the one in your office, you're definitely, it's definitely much more beneficial. But, a lot of my coworkers and a lot of people I've just spoken to throughout in the office, some of them are working from like their laptops. Yeah. Right. So it's definitely a big drawback from like the 36-inch screens that they were working on before and like the corporate phones that they had next to them. Now everyone's using their cell phones. And like me personally, now that I'm in the basement, I have really bad cell phone service down here. Right. Yeah. So it's like I tell all my coworkers, send me a text or shoot me a IM. That way I can go upstairs to actually take the phone call. So that's definitely, I think, that big drawback. It's like the setup itself. I like the office setup itself in that everyone's on the same internet speed. Everyone's using the same monitors, maybe similar keyboards, similar mouse setups. Some people have their, what do you call it? The ergonomic setups for their mouse and keyboards, but some don't. But the basic gist is that we're all on the same internet connection, which is, these corporate internet connections are super fast. Like, let's be real. And definitely on the same like cell phone or corporate phone lines and everything, which have been really nice. Whereas now I think there's some of that's a little bit of a drawback if you don't have like those setups from home. Thankfully, I'm not in that situation, so thankfully for that. And so for me, it hasn't been that much of an adjustment. But like I know I have coworkers who are working on like a 12-inch MacBook Air, man, and it's like
that's crippling.
It's hard. Yeah, it's very hard, right? Even though we're connecting to our work computers and everything, just working on just a screen of that nature when you're so used to working on a much more productive setup is definitely a lot harder. So I think
another thing to mention, right, and this goes back to I would say what you said too about transitions, right? Is there's when you're talking about workflow and stuff like that, right? And Ford was talking about how he has some setup, and he I would assume this is the same setup he uses for non-work stuff, right? So like personal stuff, like could be gaming, listening to music, editing, that sort of nature, right? Course. And when you have the same setup for work and productivity, at least from my perspective, it gets difficult to separate the two. You could be trying to do something that's not work related, but it kind of mixes in with your personal stuff. When you have it all in under one system, right? And I know people have ways to combat this. They either have different users profiles. They even they have a strict time management where they're like, okay, from this point to that point, only work. Everything else, shut down work completely. No programs related to work, anything like that. But I know, like for some jobs, that's kind of impossible. You're always on the clock, even if you're not on the clock. You're expected to answer emails and stuff, even if you're not. So when you have it all in one system, it can kind of get mixed in altogether. You kind of feel like your personal life is now part of your business life, and that's not that. You need a balance, I would say, to be very healthy. And you can combat this by having two different systems. You can have a system just dedicated to your work, and another system dedicated to your personal life. So there's ways around that, but I mean, I'm not going to assume everyone has two different systems in their homes.
Yeah, that's expensive.
It's a setup, So I would say, well, it's not a big contributing factor. I would say it definitely could affect someone who has a very busy and encompassing work lifestyle and is trying to separate that. When you're working from the office, it's a clear, like you said, a clear mental shift. This is the office. This is my work computer. Everything I do from this point on and I type, I can recognize I'm work related. And then when you go back home, sure, you might have your business corporate phone to answer emails, but that personal computer is just personal. There's nothing attached to it. So, those are the things that you don't really think about, but they do add up,
That could be true, but I also find that a lot of, at least with us, in the IT realm, a lot of stuff we do is all virtual now, right? So I'm not using my main computer or my personal computer as my work computer. I'm just using it as a means to access my work computer, right? So I do think there is a little bit of separation.
There's definitely a bridge, I would say, especially with virtualization. But even with virtualization, I would say like the program is still there, right? And if you have it running, it's still going to alert you. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Oh, that's true. Okay, I can kind of see that.
Yeah. Like it's.
Keep in mind, right? I'm no longer commuting 5 hours a day. So
That's true.
that extra
That's true.
time
That's a
that I'm
very
commuting. I'm a little bit more willing to work more hours from home now because I don't have to spend 5 hours going back and forth.
And that's
Honestly-
sort of been and to agree with you, that's sort of been my thing right now as I'm working from home. It's like, okay, those 3 hours a day that I'm no longer commuting, right? I'm putting back into work. And I think that's where the bulk of my more productivity is coming from because I don't have to wake up earlier, right? So because I don't have to wake up earlier to like go catch my method of transportation to work,
Yep.
I can literally roll out of bed, hop into my first meetings or whatever it may be, right?
Mhm.
At 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, whereas before I was waking up at 5:30, 6 in the morning, right? And so those extra 2 hours of sleep add up. And then instead of me, signing off at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., right? I'm okay with signing off at 8, 9 o'clock because it's like, well, I got to make up my extra hours of sleep and now I'm not commuting. So I have those 2-3 extra hour buffer to not only continue working, right, and be a little bit more productive, but to, even catch up on some work stuff, maybe schedule a few other meetings or stuff like that, or finish up some last minute code.
Which is
So
great also. What I would say, because I tend to be someone who's more productive during more the evening hours and the morning hours.
Oh, 100%, me as well. 100%.
So, that really does work out for, I would say, us type of people who are not really morning people, right? And we don't really turn on until, I would say, noon, right?
Yeah,
I'm
I'm a very nocturnal person.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
If I could start working at like 3 p.m. until 2 a.m., like that would be ideal.
I'm
for me.
down. I'm down. Any job that offers me those hours, I'm very, very favorable.
There is actually one more aspect of work from home that we haven't quite touched on yet, and at least this is, I think, another big piece of productivity, is the ability to work from home, especially in international teams, right? Because let's say I've got coworkers from India, I've got coworkers in the UK. We're all on different time zones, right? At what point will all of us be in the office at the same time? Never. That'll just never happen, right? So if I'm only working from the office and I need to talk with somebody about something, and they're not going to be getting online until 2 in the morning my time, got to send an email, wait for them to reply the next day. Oh wait, they misunderstood my email. Got to resend it, clarify some stuff, right? So the ability to work from home and to just log on later in the day, or maybe like shift my schedule a little bit and do a shift from maybe 4 a.m. to 2 p.m. instead of 9 to 5 or 6 or whatever, right? It makes things a lot easier, and I think it really boosts productivity, especially in international teams.
Yeah, no, I could definitely agree with you there because at least depending on where you are in the world, like, I guess it depends on the balance there. Like if the international teams are working from home, whereas you're working from the office, it gives them that flexibility because they could be on, whatever United States hours are, right?
Yep.
But if you're in, if we're working from home and they're working from the office, it gives us that flexibility. Now, if we're both working from home because of, obviously, in the current situation now with COVID-19 all over the world, if we're both working from home, it gives both of us that flexibility. Yeah. So, if I could log in at 2 o'clock in the morning my time and they're online at like 8 a.m. their time, whatever the time difference is, right? And then we flip it and they're logged in at 2 a.m. whereas I'm logged in 8 a.m. too, right? It's creates that nice balance between us. Yeah. And I think that's definitely, most major corporations around the world rely on, United States time, particularly like Northeast time. Right. But what's been really nice right now is that we can give our international teams, flexibility and, make them also feel super important to us because they are super important to the firm. So it's like, it's really nice to gather that perspective to be flexible with their time as well. Because their time, I have to say, is just as valuable, if not more valuable than our time here in the States. So.
Yeah, that's pretty much none of it. You want communication between the two, and make it feel like one big team because you guys are.
Yep.
We are exactly 100%.
And it's sometimes hard to believe that.
Why don't we talk a little about like kind of productivity tools and kind of like the equipment that is given that can kind of assist in working from home or make it closer to the working from office environment, right? So. I'm sure we've seen things like Slack and Symphony and these different chat systems, right? They're pretty much in every major corporation at this point, and even like Skype, right? The ability to just call people up real quick, or shoot them a quick IM, and more casual than email, closer to just casual conversation in real life.
Yeah. Or a firm may have their own proprietary own messaging platform. Like I know Facebook uses Facebook Messenger, for example, right?
Yep. So I think those things are kind of really big in assisting with productivity, especially remote productivity, even though they do also help in the office, right? Because you don't got to walk across the hall anymore to go see someone, just a quick message. But anyway, I do think that they could be doing a better job of encouraging productivity on work from home, and even, like I said, in office, because these tools, they translate both ways, right? So I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of Discord, and you've used it before. Personally, I think Discord would be the perfect solution for work from home purposes, right? You can set up different text channels, you can set up different roles, you can specify different groups, different roles, and kind of categorize things. And I mean, I just think it makes everything so easy. You could have a channel for particular projects, and I mean the ability for to have a couple of different sections per each team, and then let's say I'm online, I'm working, I can hop in a channel, I mute myself. Somebody needs me, all right, they just message me and I unmute myself, right? I can share my screen. It creates a much more work-friendly environment, and I think it creates a much more kind of cooperative environment where we can still kind of work together on projects, and I can show off things, and I can take help and give help. And I think that corporations should invest more in technology like Discord to really kind of bridge that gap between working from home and working from the office. And I think that will be the future for work from home.
I totally agree. I 100% agree. I think the structure, the functionalities, and the support that Discord has as a server-based communication service offers sort of things and features that other similar providers like Slack or those kind of softwares just don't offer to the same level of control and organization. Super, and it's so user friendly too. It doesn't take an IT major to figure out how to make a server side client for one particular team, or organize roles, or even set up appropriate environments for everyone else. Right? It's super easy. Anyone can do it. I've seen kids 12-year-olds do it. So it just offers it has so much tools and features that other Slacks don't have, quick share screens, video conversation, which has been added, and stuff you can even offer bots and stuff like that that can really amp up productivity and make it a much more engaging environment. What do you think, too?
I guess my counter argument to that would be that, these systems, whether you're referring to Skype, Slack, Symphony, Facebook Messenger, Discord, whatever it may be, at the end of the day, these systems were not meant to be, they were supposed to be internal use systems, It was supposed to be when we're in the office, we just IM someone real quick, or we message someone real quick like that. Now we're sort of seeing the whole transition because of working from home, that what these systems are capable of, right? And I think that's definitely a nice shift. But the main purpose of these systems was to be used internally. It was supposed to be easier to set up, I guess it's transitioning into our next, gist of social interactions, right?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be used to set up social interactions. I am my manager be like, hey, it's 3 p.m. good for you to meet today, right?
Yep.
So it's that's what those were kind of used for. They weren't really used for these whole work from home setups that we're all running on now. They were really used to really just ease the setup of communication for in-person interactions and for in-person meetings.
I definitely agree with that. I can see really where you're coming from. But I think you're totally right, though. I think what we're doing now, with for example, what I just discussed using Discord for, would be as a replacement for social interaction, or I guess as close to a replacement as you can possibly get, right? And I mean, we've done it working on projects together, the three of us, using Discord. I mean, it's as close to a meeting you in real life and working on thing replacement as you can get. And again, it saves the time of having to commute, having to go see each other, right? We're not close, so it saves everyone that time. And then I mean, especially now with COVID, we can work fairly close in terms of our productivity as we would together, and we don't have to be together at all. So there's no risk of spreading COVID. And I mean, I personally am a big fan of the stuff, and I think that they could really, really be helpful in business.
So let's narrow down on the whole social interaction aspect of this, right? Two, do you really think these types of tools can replace physical social interaction in a day, like you would get in a typical office setting?
Personally, no, I don't think so. Like, I'm in that realm of, we have like these little like cafeterias or coffee like shops around the around the office.
Yeah.
And so I think my best interactions or my most productive interactions actually came from like those accidental like meetings. I'm just walking down to the coffee shop and all of a sudden I run into one of my coworkers who's may or may not even be in my division. He may be in a completely other side of the firm. But we talk for about 15, 20 minutes really quick and just discuss, what each other's up to, what project we're working on internally, what's going on in that realm. And he may mention something offhand, and this has happened several times. He may mention something offhand, and he was like, huh. And I immediately think like, hey, I could probably use this tool for my project, actually, that I'm working on now. Or I may mention a tool, and they may be able to use it on their project there. And so it really helps create that like one giant firm setup, because not everyone is aware of what everyone is doing at all times, right? That's nearly impossible, even from like an executive standpoint. Like, I highly doubt like our executives know what every little nitty gritty project is for every single team. It's very, very hard to maintain something like that. And
I see what you're saying.
And so what I found from those interactions, at least me personally with the other IT and engineers and even business people that I've met, is like, we just come up with these random ideas out of nowhere. And we're like, this could be something viable and useful for not only us, but for the firm in general. Right. Yep. And I think that's been, the biggest thing I think we're missing from this whole work from home thing that the office has.
Are these like random encounters?
Yeah. It's just these random encounters, these random ideas, these random
they add value that you can't really, you can't
quantify something like that. I really can't quantify that.
It's kind of like the equivalent of the closest equivalent I can think of doing it in like Discord or something like that, right? Is that if you're away from a meeting, you have a huge public room that everyone goes to, right? To hang out or something, and maybe. If there's one public channel, everyone's hanging out, you might interact with someone there. But then again, then it gets cluttered, then it gets messy. It's not the same one-on-one.
I think what's different in Discord or any other chat platform or something like that, with no discredit to any of those services, I use all of them and I think they're all amazing in their own ways. It's that when I'm talking, for example, like how I'm discussing with you two right here, it's like our own little pod of a conversation, right? Yeah. I think that's what's different with the social interactions. Imagine having everyone in that coffee house, right, just being on this one Discord server. I wouldn't know who I'm talking to because everyone's just talking at the same time. Yeah. It's not a setup that's viable. Everyone has their own little like conversations.
Can't emulate that.
It's hard to emulate that. Exactly.
The only way to emulate that is to have multiple channels, right? And you can just kind of pull yourself up. Like, I think people do this all the time, right? So I've spent a lot of time on the internet. I would say a lot of my childhood and growing up was spent playing video games with, people online. Some of like my fondest memories and best friends come from playing video games, and these are people that a lot of them I haven't even met in real life before, and yet I've probably spent more time with some of these guys online in voice comms than I have with a lot of my actual friends that I've known for years in real life.
There's some stranger danger there. There's a heads up for.
Of course,
like,
but
it was a different time, I personally did.
It was a different time, but two, sometimes you don't even have intentions of like meeting people, right? It's just you play games together, and for example, depending on the game you're playing, sometimes there's groups and clans and guilds, right? And you're a group of dozens of people all playing the same thing together in the same channel, doing different things. And I mean, if you get into kind of a side conversation, what do? You just pull yourself down a channel and you separate yourself, right? So I wouldn't say it's impossible to emulate, because I've been emulating it probably for the last decade, playing different types of video games with large groups of people. It's more difficult to emulate. I would say kind of like really connecting with somebody on the internet is a lot harder to do than it is to do it in person, where you can read body language and kind of, you know, read eyes and kind of read more into what people are actually saying. But I wouldn't necessarily call it impossible, and people would just need to become more proficient in how to do it online, right? Because a lot of people just don't have that skill set. You know, not everyone has spent a decade playing games and using these services like I have, for example, and like you have, Nine, right? So, I mean, I would say we're very proficient in connecting online and being productive with people online. And I think it's its own skill set, right? It's something that you would have to learn how to do and learn how to interact with people that way.
I agree. I mean, I personally have similar experiences growing up. I've met a lot of people through gaming services and stuff like that. And, you know, it's sort of like the same feeling that Chu was talking about. Like, there's just these random encounters that you just have, you know, a random match that you played, and it kind of blooms from it. But, and to a part, it is very similar to like a random encounter in the physical realm, the physical world. But I think it still would be difficult to emulate, even if you could emulate it on purpose. I think that's the problem. A lot of these interactions that we had growing up were because there were different circumstances or different environments, and there was a different time. And it wasn't on purpose. That's the big thing. These offices kind of promote these random encounters, I would say, with like cafes and stuff like that. And it kind of sets everything up for it to kind of happen. It doesn't have to happen to everyone, but it kind of happens. While if you kind of do the same thing on Discord, I would say it would be a little bit too hard to purposely emulate that. Accidentally, sure, it can happen. 100%. I can definitely see it happening. How you talk to people, they kind of see, you know, kind of similar interests and stuff like that, and they kind of like go into their own channel to interact more. But I really have a difficulty seeing that happen in like one big channel where everyone, like number two was saying, where like everyone's just talking at once. You know, it's very difficult to isolate that in a public channel like Discord. But I could see, you know, if Discord decided to like, let's kind of emulate that random encounter effect, sure, they can probably take motives and steps to do it. But currently, as it stands, I don't see it supported.
Let's look at like
very
chat
well.
rooms, right? Like 2,000 chat rooms, right? These are just public places that people can join to talk with other people, right? I mean, you have plenty of relationships that came out of these things, friendships that came out of these things. Some of these chat rooms people go back to, and I mean, some of them are still live today, right?
Yeah.
And there are definitely areas and different situations and examples of just having a general public spot online where people can just go to talk and hang out in that succeed in relationships. And like I said, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's guaranteed to work. All I'm saying is I think you can do it to a certain degree with things like Discord and other.
I think the biggest difference is that with these online examples, like video games, chat rooms, right? People come in there of their own volition because they're looking for something sort of like similar interests, right? While in a work environment, you're not purposely coming into your own volition of a public chat room to make an interaction. You're probably going into that cafe room because you wanted to get coffee.
Yeah, that's usually the case. Like,
you know,
we're usually heading over there to get coffee, a bagel, maybe a sandwich or something, right? Because
it just happens to like
it just happens. Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
or like these chat examples, like even video games, right? You're going in there to play a video game, and you just happen to talk to someone, right? Because you're your own volition. You already have similar interests. But while, like Tu was saying, you could be talking to someone who is not like you at all. Completely different division, completely different project, completely different set of skills, and you probably wouldn't even hang out with each other if you guys were friends. But you guys, are willing to talk because you guys are there, both human beings, and you want to interact. So I think the circumstances are different. While I still think that, yes, you have a point, I still think it could happen. It could definitely happen, 100%. Just not to the same degree, I would say, physically.
Well, there are different areas of work that you connect people, right? Like you've got different circles and different like side projects and kind of activities and almost I would call them like club-like things that come out of different offices.
They are like that, yes, 100%. They are like that.
I mean, if you were to set up, for example, maybe like a Python coding channel, right, where people who are interested in Python can just join it, and maybe other people from work can kind of give you some pointers or answer questions for you, right? or different projects that you like or are interested in. You can ask them about stuff. I mean, there are ways to facilitate people talking to each other outside of going to get coffee.
100%. I think it really does come down at the end of the day how we move forward with this and how these companies kind of facilitate that. They were able to do it physically because, all these cafes that they build in their office, this wasn't like a fleeting thought. This was purposely planned. Every single cafe you see in every floor, every single Starbucks location you see in a building, any single fast food cafe you see planted was purposely built to facilitate like human interaction to conversations. Google I think is one of the best examples of this.
Yeah,
right?
Google I think does it the best out of all of them.
Their headquarters was facilitated that you're pretty much never more than 10 feet, 5 feet away from food, right? Mm-hmm. And they know one is because it facilitates food with humans. That's a good feeling. You always free food is like just an instant good feeling, a mood.
I think food in general, regardless if it's free or not, is just a good feeling.
Yeah, but it's better the fact that it's free. I mean, that's like double food. But it also has a second side effect. Two human beings are going to go there to the same place to get food, and that facilitates, interaction.
Convos. Yeah.
And like you were saying, I think that can definitely happen with circles and groups and stuff like that.
But it may also not even just be cafes and stuff like that. Crazy things have happened inside an elevator. You just walk into an elevator. Next thing I know, I'm in an elevator with one of the heads of the division. Me and him just start getting into a conversation, and then we just sort of butted into this sort of like mentor-mentee kind of thing, right?
Exactly. I think that's the biggest difference, right? You're not purposely going to a cafe to meet someone or purposely going to an elevator to talk to someone, right? These are just things that happen.
Exactly.
They're just
chance encounters.
To get your end. Exactly. Chance encounters. Well, for like circles and stuff like that, right? You yourself, of your own volition, would have to go to that circle, and you will have to view it as something that's worth your time. They're not like something that just sparks. But we'll see what that goes on. So speaking of Google headquarters and stuff like that, these headquarters, right? They cost a lot of money. Billions and billions of dollars, right? Facebook's was a really good example of their headquarters, where they're constantly evolving it and growing it and expanding it. You got Google's, you got what's it called, Apple's, who is just they just finished building their new theater.
You even have Amazon. You even have Amazon now, who just opened a new one in Virginia.
Exactly. So these are not cheap. Just viewing them, that they're millions, if not billions of dollars easily spent, right? So as people look towards, we should start working from home, maybe, right? We should argue, is working from home justifies not, renting on the property costs anymore, or are there still a valid expense that we should do for working from office? What do you guys think?
Yeah, personally, I'm in the boat of, I think, based on the current circumstances we are in now,
yeah,
I think offices are really going to go back and look at their real estate holdings and decide if they want to expand or not. I think expanding is going to be a very mindful thing now, right? Do we need that extra, 1,200 square foot space or 12,000 square foot warehouse or something? Or do we need this, right?
I think it's a positive or a negative due to the whole everything?
I think definitely it's going to be, at least in the short term, I think it's going to be a negative.
Okay.
Right? I think it's either going to be a negative or it's going to come to a standstill where everyone's either just going to maintain what they have or they're going to actually reduce what they own.
Yeah.
But I think over the long term, it's definitely going to, hopefully things go back to normal and we see things going back to the way they were from everyone working from the office and everything. I think they're definitely going to be expanding because, people are going to need jobs. People are going to need offices to go and work into. So I think it will definitely expand at that point. Mm-hmm. How long that will take, I couldn't tell you. But I definitely think in a long-term view that things should return back to normal. But at least in the short term, it's definitely going to be like a stagnant or maybe even a negative viewpoint.
I can see that. As a lot of people were advocating when this pandemic started and everything, was like, why even work from the office? Why working from home just has, a lot of benefits, right? And I can definitely see a lot of corporations being like, well, why would I have these billions of dollars in revenue and expenses in maintaining an office or building a headquarters if we're not really going to use it to the full extent as previously, where you can justify it because this is where everyone works, this is where your money maker is, and you need a good environment to and a good business culture to facilitate such good productivity. But if you're not even going to have that anymore, that environment, then what's the point, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen with everything moving forward?
I think we're going to see thousands of businesses get rid of their offices in exchange for either a fully remote program or a partially remote, partially in office program.
Yeah.
That have really
Amazon was another big success in this everything.
And shipping and like all these other companies, right? There are certain companies that just have almost no reliance on physical goods, right? Especially like, let's take your social media platforms right now. They have no reliance on physical goods. And I mean, people are using them now more than ever because everybody's home, right? So how are people connecting? They're connecting virtually, which increases traffic and increases revenue, right? So, I mean, I think there's almost some of these companies are going to see they have almost no reason to keep their physical location. And I could see companies get rid of their properties completely and move to something like, especially once the pandemic is over, maybe like once every month they'll just do like renting like a hotel conference room, right? And they can bring everybody in. They can have their monthly meetings, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it's going to cost them a couple $1,000s to rent that room every month, but I mean, a couple $1,000s to rent a big conference hall is a heck of a lot cheaper than paying rent every month for a giant office to have all your employees come in.
No, I spoke earlier about Amazon, right? Which is, I would say, one said a lot of companies did actually benefit from this whole pandemic. And Amazon was one of the biggest highlights of that beneficial, right? I think he made like billions and billions of dollars from this whole, because as everyone shifted from home, right? Instead of going outside, they wanted to shift to their homes, right? Mm-hmm. But even Amazon, someone who greatly benefited, right, still needs physical locations. Their warehouses, these are necessities, physical locations, real estate that they just can't drop, especially as everything moves from work from home, Mm-hmm. And I think you can argue that there are at least some levels of business or some types of corporations that just can't be fully digital. There has
I
to
would
be
agree.
some sort of physical.
I would agree on that front. So like you're gonna see some corporations such as Amazon, right, that are going to be expanding their real estate footprint. But to Forrest's point, I definitely see a lot of small businesses, right, definitely shutting their doors or going into much smaller spaces, maybe co-working spaces like how WeWork provides, right?
Yeah.
Just because they can see that, hey, a physical office presence really isn't needed and that we could really all just work from like all our remote locations. But I guess this is really going to come down to basically those who owned versus those who leased or rented, right? Mm-hmm. If a corporation owns their space, I highly, highly doubt they're going to get rid of it. They're still going to take advantage of it. They're still going to renovate it. It's their asset, right? Mm-hmm. But like if it's a one that they lease or they rent out of, I think they just let the lease or rent play out, and they go from there.
I think also you raise a really good point. If it's the type of business, if it's a big corporation or it's a small business, and it makes sense for even big corporations just to like wait it out, because one can never know that after 2 or 3 years, this whole pandemic, it can shift dramatically back to a work from office situation, right? Yep. And while small businesses, they just can't handle the costs for that long. So they might either realize that we can dramatically just mobilize our whole operation as a online only front, or they're just going to have to shell the cost, keep it mobile for temporarily until it's needed time for everything to open back up. So I think even the type of business itself, on top of like what do they sell and what are their products and what are their services, it's a whole contributing factor to whatever, if it's a work from home or work from office situation. It might not be a choice they can have, Yep.
Yeah.
So lastly, the last thing we should talk about is, like I said, way in the beginning of the conversation, the whole reason we're having this conversation in the first place is because of the whole pandemic going on, right? Mm-hmm. And it was such a dramatical and sudden change that a lot of businesses had to, completely 180 on the way they operate, Universities itself, one of the biggest blunders of this, has a lot of them were not necessarily ready to mobilize to such an online only environment,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of corporations also suffered to it. I can imagine millions and billions of dollars of revenue lost during this whole pandemic shift towards an online only digital environment, right?
Yep.
So there are a lot of, as we say, we're a couple months into this whole pandemic. A lot of things are still uncertain. New information is still coming out. And, a lot of things are still exactly and unclear how things are going to pan out. One thing I don't know if you guys have read this, but the World Organization said they predict that the whole pandemic might last 2 or 3 years more. Now, with that information, how do you think this pandemic might shift, this overall argument that we're having, work from home, work from office, if it's going to be 2 more years, 3 more years?
Well, I mean, it sounds like they're gonna have no choice but to work from home.
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, we have saw states open up regardless of warnings. Here's
the thing, right? There's a difference between having the ability to open your offices and actually opening your offices, right? I think I think at some point in the future we're gonna have to see a kind of landmark civil decision in the court system, right? Someone's office is going to open up. They're going to force them to come back to the office to go back to work, even though they are still fearful of the pandemic. And then they're going to sue their office or their company for opening up and forcing them to come in, even though maybe it wasn't required for them to, right? I think anyone that has the capability of working from home should be working from home, regardless of what your state allows. And I mean, like I said, I think we'll see some landmark decision because, I mean, if you have the ability to work from home and your employer still forces you to come into the office anyway, and then you get sick and either, die or get deathly ill because of their decision to force you back even though you didn't have to, I mean, I think that there's liability in that decision. So, I mean,
it's funny.
We're going to see a court decision on this at some point in the future.
It's funny you mentioned this, right? There was a big issue, I think, a few weeks ago about this. I don't remember if it was Tesla or SpaceX, right? But they opened up a few weeks ago, and they said, right, their public response to it was, it's optional, right? It's like the employees can come in if they want or not. So from what I was reading on the forums and people who actually work there anonymously, it's not optional. So it's kind of like the whole say but then don't do kind of thing. Or like they're saying to the public, don't worry, we're giving the employees the freedom of choice. But at the same time, your manager's going to kill you if you don't come in. So
yeah, I read that report. That was Tesla. And you bring up an interesting point with this whole, the pandemic goes for 2 or 3 more years.
Again, I can say this once again, like you said earlier, this comes down to the culture of the company, right? If you're working for a company that's willing to, force your hand like that, maybe you should reconsider working for them, right? Mm-hmm. And that may be a whole thing to consider later on. But at the same time,
it's easier said than done, though, right? I mean, talk about
exactly. Yeah. That's easier said than done. You might be, especially with the pandemic and the economy right now, you may not be in a position to just make a change like that, right? And now you're, like you said, even if years later on you decide to take them to court, right? Given if you even have the funds or the time to do that, you're dealing with a major corporation with hundreds and hundreds of lawyers ready to back them up. It's not going to be an easy task. Yeah. And given that you even do all this and you have the funds to tackle it on and you just happen to win, right? You still, at the end of the day, went there and potentially got sick. Your health was at risk. And, some can say your health is not tied to any monetary value.
I mean, if you're winning that lawsuit, odds are you did get sick.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. So, like, it's like you said, it's easier said than done. You can be in a position where unfortunately, your company is telling publicly it's an optional thing, but within the corporation culture that if you don't show up on Monday, you ain't getting a call back.
Yeah.
So I think with that report in particular, right? I would
Yeah.
like to hear the other side of it from like Tesla's side of it, because
Elon
besides
Musk?
just the
You want me to
employee side.
call him?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you got Elon Musk's phone number. Let
I
me
think
know.
he's busy right now, but I'll call him later.
All right, no worries. But like, I would like to hear both sides of the story, so I'm probably not going to comment on that one. But in general, just from like the working from home situation, I think definitely. I saw the WHO report this morning, the World Health Organization report this morning, that this could go for 2-3 more years. You know, if it does, it's very unfortunate because lots of people's livelihoods are at stake. Lots of people have lost their lives. The economy is not in the best shape.
Yeah.
For your average consumer. But going back to this work from home thing, definitely you're going to see a spike of work from home cases. But I think the most important thing you're going to see now, right, is definitely a much, much broader spike in social distancing, in wearing masks. And I think that's going to be the whole, change aspect that we're going to see, even if we do return to office, right? I think even if we do return to office, it's unfortunate to say this, but I don't think we're going to be going back to the offices that we know, or getting on subways and trains and buses as we know, right?
Yeah, it won't be the same.
Everyone's gonna have a mask. Everyone's gonna be socially distant. It's not gonna be the same as what it was.
The world changed too much already.
We've definitely changed. I want to see what the effects of this change are going to be, but it's definitely going to be, even if we do return to office, it's definitely going to be a much more, socially distant, mask wearing, hand sanitizers, all this,
limitating on occupation, all that.
Yeah, and I don't think this is just particular to like one corporation. I think this is just a whole broad thing. Before we saw this mostly in hospitals, right?
Yeah.
Who dealt with serious injuries, with viruses and stuff like this. But I think this is definitely a more broader thing, where it's just going to be a broader precaution, not just across the healthcare industry, but across finance, tech, industrials, basically any major corporation or industry you can think of. I think it's going to be a broader scope across all of them.
Yeah, and you raised a good point about like Tesla and SpaceX. They could have a very good reason. These are not, I would say, primarily software products, right? There are a lot of mechanical work.
They build a product, yeah. They build a product.
Of course there's some software products in there because Tesla's cars run on software today program, but end of the day, they have to manufacture the car, which is a physical thing. And you have SpaceX, requires rockets and stuff like that. These are physically built products, And like you're saying, even in a pandemic, you need to get back to work, right? Now, we don't know how, Tesla or SpaceX, whoever offered the report, handled it. They may have handled it the best way possible. They may have completely changed the structure of how you work, occupational limits, hand sanitizer stations every corner, mask up 100% requirement, and maybe it was a completely safe and sanitary environment to work in. And I would love to hear their point of view. Unfortunately, they haven't, I don't think, released anything from that, and I don't think they will. But I would definitely, like I said, I'm not 100% against them what they did, right? There's always a two sides to every coin.
But even, no matter how safe the office is, right? For example, for me, I'm taking 2 trains to get to my office.
Yeah.
And I now have to put myself in public on 2 trains, dirty, dingy trains, to get to my office, and like
which is exposure rates,
huge amount of exposure. And like I said, 5-hour round trip commute every day on dirty public trains. Like, there's just, I don't see any way for me to really go back to the office.
And it could be completely fabricated. The internet's not an honest place 100% of the time. The reports that, from so-and-so employees saying that it wasn't optional could have been just random trolls, could have been random people, could have been totally fabricated to put a bad image on Tesla and SpaceX. Because you got to remember also, Elon Musk is, the public figure of these companies, and he's been having a 180 in terms of image recognition and fame in terms of people from the internet. People used to love him back in 2019. Now recently criticizing him a lot, especially for his actions, what he tweeted, right? So, it could have been just, trolls just trying to put a bad spin on a story, Yep. So I would love to hear the full story if that was possible. And maybe, it was completely blown out of the waters. Maybe it was only a sole selection of people. a very essential team that has to work on this product. So we don't know, but we're wrapping up. I think we kind of explained our stance and what's going on, stuff like that. So I would just like to hear your final thoughts. 4 and 2. What do you think with everything going on?
I could go first, but I guess from my perspective, I don't see a full-blown shift into working from home, and I don't see a full-blown shift in going completely back to the office. I think what we're going to end up seeing after hopefully this pandemic is over is definitely a hybrid model of just working, of like maybe 3 days working from home, 2 days working from the office, and we call it a day, or maybe 2 days working from the office, 3 days working from home, or maybe we may even see a full-time return to office, but we're going to see a lot more flexible hours. So instead of me coming into the office at 8 a.m., I may not have to come to the office till 12, right? And I may stay till 8 p.m., right? So I think you're definitely going to see staggered commutes. I think you're definitely going to see a shift between working from home, working from the office. I think there's going to be a weird new normal, I guess you can call it the new normal, of just a counterbalance of balancing working from home, working from the office, and what your staggered commute would look like. And I don't think we're going to go full blown back to 9 to 5, because I think we've definitely shown over the course of these last 3-4 months that, the 9 to 5 really doesn't exist anymore, right? You can work on your hours as long as you're getting the work done and you're being productive throughout your time.
I think also a lot of people, with what you said, people realize the effect that we're now a globalized kind of world, right? The 9 to 5 really worked because it was strictly to, your time zone, right? But as these corporations grow and you have teams from India, Europe, all over the world, the 9 to 5 hour, right, this framework, this doesn't work anymore. And it makes more sense to extend to your team needs, Yep.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Flo? What are your final thoughts on everything?
So I agree a lot with what Tu said. I think that a hybrid model is probably where businesses will thrive best, because like I said, you've got people like me who work way better at home, and then you've got people like Tu who work better in the office. And I mean, it's not an easy really answer to just do completely one or the other. I think the fairest thing to do is to give people the option, whatever they work better at, let them do it. I like the versatility of working from home. In terms of flexible hours, and I mean, if they can provide that along with an office that we can go in optionally, I think that's going to be the real way to kind of progress. And I mean, because if you're especially now during the pandemic, if you're healthy and people in your house are not immunocompromised and not old, maybe you don't mind going to the office. You wear masks, use your hand sanitizer. It's not a big deal for you. But there's plenty of people who don't have that opportunity and can't be risking going out right now, or work better at home, or for whatever reason. I think the hybrid model is going to be really. I think that's the way to go. It kind of just captures the needs of everybody.
I think so too. I think to really summarize it very well, it's going to be a new normal. Yep. I think it's going to be set. It's not going to. It might slowly migrate back to the work from home as a mindset, but at the same time, it's not going to be back in 2019. It's going to be with masks. It's going to be with restrictions on occupation. It's going to be on focus on, health-related stuff as we move forward and health-related issues. But I would also see how, with everything that happened, a lot of companies already have been mobilizing and kind of transform their structures to work from home. I doubt they're going to throw away that architecture, that structure they spend the last few months building to just throw it away. So I think we will see, kind of really depends on the corporation's resources. They might do a hybrid system, or for smaller ones, if they're ready to mobilize completely, they might just stick with the work from home aspect for a while. But with that all said, I hope you guys, anyone listening, thank you so much for listening on us. Mm-hmm. It was a great topic. Honestly, I know this was, related to the whole pandemic and everything. So I hope everyone out there is safe and well. I wish you guys all best, and I hope that at least for our future and the rest of 2020, it looks brighter for everyone. And who knows what's going on, but I hope everyone the best. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening to 9 Podcast to Me Request, Thank you for listening to the topic, working from office and working from home. And we'll see you next week.
Yep. Thanks.
Bye-bye, guys.
Next week.
Thanks, guys.